Okay, here's the thing. They're not glamorous, but after studying note-taking and note-takers and apps and systems for the last 3 years, these three ideas that I'm going to cover in this video seem to have more of a bearing on whether someone's a sustainable and minimal and productive note-taker than any other things that I've covered. So we're going to walk through them today in this video. And so number one is minimal note taking. And now this is an idea that I coined and is one of the core theories that I have around PKM. And so we're going to try and understand it first before we go on to the other two ideas. And it's the core of my personal knowledge management theory, and I covered it first back in an article at the start of August 2023. And the idea states that there's kind of a continuum between the most complex note-taking system, which could be like any 40-step workflow, I like to say, with AI, and it kind of writes you your emails when you wake up in the morning, etc., etc. That's the most complicated possible workflow, and also the least complicated possible workflow, so the simplest, and that could be, on the most extreme end, which we'll use as a demonstration, just writing notes down on a napkin and putting the napkin in your pocket for later. And so that's the continuum of note-taking simplicity and complexity, and everybody's optimum is somewhere in between simplicity for allowing you to kind of keep your mind clear of distractions, and complexity, and also complexity in the sense that it allows you to progress your projects using a useful feature here, a useful feature there, but then again, not too much. And so the thing is, with people that are interested in personal knowledge management, they're interested in note-taking, they're naturally exposed to all of this different marketing and ideas and systems and apps talk around note-taking, and they end up going way too far on the complexity side. And so I was the same as well. I ended up kind of using Notion for this and that. I had about 20 different databases and no work was actually happening. And so after a while, when I started using Obsidian, heading into university and developing the Parazettal system, I realized I've got to pare things all the way back to the more simple side of the spectrum. And I suggest that a lot of you watching this, who are people interested in PKM and apps and systems, should do the same as well. And so the way I suggest that this works is to build from the ground up instead. So like I say here, build from the ground up. You start with the absolute minimum viable system that you possibly can. So perhaps for you that is simply just using Word documents in your Google Drive. And so when you start doing that, you do as much work as you possibly can in the outcomes and the goals that you need to achieve. And then when you run into a roadblock that could perhaps be solved by a little bit of additional complexity, then you could perhaps add that complexity in. And so for this, I do actually suggest starting with my Parazettal for Obsidian Vault, which I've recently made free, and you can download for yourself for free for the top link in the description. And I've designed that vault, first of all, with minimal note-taking in mind, and giving you a good app, a sustainable app, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the video, that you can begin in and use a very, very simple system in. And it also gives you some additional ideas, like I am doing in this video, on how to develop your system and add complexity and useful features in when they are actually going to benefit your system and your output, rather than just doing it willy-nilly and making sure that you're setting yourself up for confusion and over complexity later on in the future. So you can get that vault plus a 30-minute demo video for free when you click the top link in the description. And I really do think that that's a good place to start when you're starting with the minimum viable system in minimal note-taking. And so you can use all of the other free resources that I've given out to decide which kind of additional plugins that you might want to put into that vault when you're working on things that you're working on, because I don't know your situation. I've just made that as simple as possible for people to use to get off the ground. And so when you, like I said, do come across these roadblocks, you can add features, you can add plugins, and build slowly up to that optimal point, rather than being way too far on the complexity side and then having to try and pare things back. Just go back to the simplest possible and work your way up to a system that works from there. And so that pretty much covers this second idea as well, which is evolving your system naturally. And so I'm a former, I know it says I am a zoology student in the slide, but I'm a former zoology student now. And so please bear with me if I do try and explain this from a perspective of natural evolution. And so how I like to put this is, even though it's on, of course, it's on a much, much shorter time scale because species evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, we've got to try and mimic more the natural evolution of species when we're evolving our own note-taking system, as opposed to like snap changes here, snap changes there, because it really, really distracts us and takes us out of the flow of being able to develop slowly within a certain system. And so the example I always like to use for this is of the Irish elk, which was a gigantic kind of like deer-related, caribou-related species that lived in the Northern Hemisphere many, many years ago. It's extinct now. And this Irish elk, we can liken it to someone who's getting the evolution of their PKM system wrong. What it did was it evolved really, really, really massive, massive antlers when the environment called for it. So we can liken that to someone like spotting a new app that's kind of popped out of the woodwork as something useful and then jumping straight over to that app and investing all of the time into that. And then this Irish elk grew these and evolved very quickly these massive, massive antlers that were great and very useful in the moment. But as the environment started to change and as the resources started to get more scarce and as these antlers became less and less effective as a form of evolution for the environment, the Irish elk couldn't cope and therefore it fell into extinction. And so that can be likened to someone who's jumped across this brand new note-taking app and found out that this app isn't at all what they wanted and have to switch everything back again to the app they were using previously. And so that is such a huge waste of time, and a huge waste of time that I've fallen for myself time and time again in the past, like going to Tana, trying to make that work, realizing it's too complicated, coming back to Obsidian and then switching to Apple Notes because I've got too distracted because I bought a new laptop. That was what actually happened like a little bit more than 2 years ago when I first bought this MacBook for myself. But think about it. When you use one system and you evolve it slowly according to like the minimal note-taking principles, where you've got a little bit of a bridge to cross in terms of you need a little extra feature, you can bring that in, but just do it slowly and make sure that you're building things slowly over time, because my vault doesn't look the same as how it did 2 years ago, 3 years ago when I started building Parazetto. It really doesn't. And despite this, it still feels like I'm working in the same system because I've been slow and measured with the changes that I've made. I've used the same foundational principles and system, like folder system, and I've taken it slowly. I've evolved slowly, and I've continued in the same app in Obsidian. And that's what I think you should do, is just evolve your system rather than trying to like snap jump left, right, because you spot a new feature over there or this app suggesting this over there. What's it actually doing? Is you're not completing any of your work. You're just moving around and making yourself feel productive. And now these solutions in this video aren't for the person who kind of wants like which plugin to use or which app to use or which feature, this, that, and the other. But and I do like making those videos, mind you, because they get me views. But I do think this is a really, really important, or these three things are really important principles to grasp hold of when it comes to personal knowledge management, because at the end of the day, it's like an infinite game. There's not an end goal to personal knowledge management. You don't like, okay, I've completed 100% of personal knowledge management. Now, that doesn't make sense. Of course, that doesn't make sense. And so really, you should just kind of sustainably build something that allows you to continue achieving your goals, whatever environment you might go into. And that is this third idea down here. Sustainability beats features. And this ties very, very closely into making these very, very small changes over time to evolve your system rather than like going too far one way or too far the other way. The important thing is that you can continue working in an app and a system for a long time, because it's like anything else. You wouldn't like, I wrote this article a while back likening a PKM system to your house. When you're in a house, you eventually very slowly learn where you put all of your things, where to go in the morning, where you store all your food in the shelves. It's like you learn the little okay, the shower's a little bit kind of cranky, you've got to be very gentle with it. Okay, let's not slam the door too hard, otherwise the plaster falls off the ceiling. It's these tiny, tiny, tiny things, and you don't realize that you pick that up in your PKM system as well, in whatever app you're using. So I've got very, very minuscule Obsidian habits and tendencies that make my life so much easier when added together to come to general overall note taking. And it's like learning about where you live. It's like living in the same house for a long time. And I can talk about this now because I've been traveling around Southeast Asia for coming up on 2 months now. And every time you move place, I've been trying to travel and see places, but then again, I like to settle down and stay in one spot, because every time you go somewhere new, one, you have to find a new gym, you have to find new friends, you have to find a new place to stay, you don't know where the best places for food are. And it's the same if you look, okay, maybe Evernote's got this new AI feature and you've got to go over there to try it out, and then maybe Notion have introduced chat and offline mode. Okay, you're coming back to Notion. It's so much less effective than to stick in one place in a system and an app that you know is going to be around for a long time, like I do with Obsidian and the community and the fact that it's offline and privacy focused. Even though it might not have the most up-to-date or upgraded or improved features, I know that if I learn all of these kind of shortcuts and workflows and tendencies that are really too minuscule for me to spot even consciously, but add up so much to create the overall experience in an app. So long as I've got those, then I'm going to get so much more work done than someone that's trying to chase the most advanced and complex and like seemingly suitable but not really suitable app. And so pick sustainability over features. Tiago Forte talks about this. He says don't use an app that's not been around for 10 years or more, and that's why he remains using Evernote even though he's used Obsidian to write books or whatever. That's another vote for Obsidian, by the way. But I've used Obsidian because it's privacy focused and the community is really strong. And so even if the team did like kind of cease support on the app, you would hope that it would be made open source and the community could contribute to it and keep it going and keep it pretty much functioning in the way that it should be functioning and has been functioning for the last 5 years or so now. So that is, to summarize, a little talk about how the less distracted note taker focuses on minimalism, first of all, so having less stuff actually in, less moving pieces actually in the system that they're using. A lot more sustainability, so picking an app that's going to be around for a long time so you can really sink into it and learn your tendencies and your shortcuts. And also consistency as well, so small changes over time that make you feel like really you're operating in exactly the same system and app, but actually over a longer period of time, like a separation of one species into two, you realize you've ended up with two very different things. And that is a more organic and natural way to evolve your system, and it makes you a less distracted and less swamped by complexity as well. And so those are the three things that I learned when I was just starting to take notes and remain in the same system and build a proper personal knowledge management practice. And it took me from someone being completely distracted by everything in this world of note-taking apps. Like I was moving around almost twice every single week, and I've tried everything even now still. There's not a new app that's come out that I've not kind of installed and seen what it's like, but I've gotten better at realizing that minimalism, consistency and sustainability are really the way forward if you want to build a long-term practice that helps you achieve your goals over the longer term. And I really think the Parazettal for Obsidian template that you can get for free at the top link in the description is a really good place to start for this, because I've designed it first of all with these principles in mind, and second of all with all of my experience as being a student and somebody who runs a formerly part-time, now full-time business on the internet. And it's a great place to start and implement these theories that I talked about here, so like small changes over time and keeping things simple until you need to add a little bit more complexity. And so like I said, get that at the top link in the description. I'll also put a link to my growing community as well inside of the video description, and I'll be back soon, perhaps with a little talk about the map view and Obsidian basis. So we'll go between theory and features, and we'll talk about a feature next. So I will see you in that video, and thank you for watching this far, and take care.